To the husbands who pay the bills while we enjoy their wives, the room exploded with laughter at my wife's business partner's mocking toast. My smile hid the rage burning inside me. Later that night, I discovered their video messages, making love in our bed, calling me the cash cow they'd milked before leaving. They had no idea what hell I had prepared for them. They just needed to wait until Monday. My name is Jake Collins, and until that Friday night in September, I thought I had it all. A thriving transportation company I'd built from the ground up, a beautiful home in Austin's most exclusive neighborhood, and Amanda, my wife of 6 years, a rising star at the prestigious law firm Lawrence and Price. We were the definition of a power couple, at least on paper and in the carefully curated photos on Amanda's Instagram account. The invitation to the firm's annual partnership celebration had arrived on a Tuesday afternoon while I was in my office reviewing quarterly reports. My transportation company had just secured 3 major contracts that would increase our revenue by 30% next year, and I'd been putting in 16-hour days ensuring everything went smoothly. "Mr. Collins, your wife is on line 1, my assistant announced through the intercom, interrupting my concentration as I scrutinized a particularly complex logistics plan. I picked up, pressing the phone between my ear and shoulder while continuing to scan the numbers on my screen. "Jake Collins." "Jake, honey." Amanda's voice had that particular sweetness she reserved exclusively for when she wanted something. 6 years of marriage had taught me to recognize it immediately, like a soldier identifying the distinctive whistle of an incoming artillery shell. "Don't forget about the party this Friday." I paused, frowning as I searched my mental calendar and came up empty. "What party?" Her sigh traveled through the phone line, heavy with disappointment and laced with an undercurrent of annoyance that she didn't quite manage to disguise. "The annual partnership celebration at Lawrence and Price. I told you about this 3 weeks ago over dinner at Josephine's, remember? When we were discussing the Westfield case?" Truthfully, I had completely forgotten. Between the new contracts, the hiring of 15 additional drivers, and negotiations for a new warehouse space, the mention of a law firm party had evaporated from my memory. "Amanda, I don't know if I can make it. We just landed the Henderson account, and the transition timeline is extremely aggressive. I need to personally oversee." "Jake," her voice hardened, the honey-sweet tone vanishing instantly. "This is important for my career. William Price himself will be there, along with all the senior partners. They're announcing the shortlist for the next round of partnership considerations, and I need to make a good impression. I need my husband by my side." I rubbed my temples, feeling the beginning of a stress headache forming behind my eyes. Amanda's partnership ambitions had become increasingly all-consuming over the past year. Our conversations inevitably circled back to office politics, case assignments, and strategic visibility within the firm. Our lives, our relationship, had somehow become subordinate to the almighty goal of seeing Amanda Collins' partner etched onto a polished oak door. "Fine. What time?" I conceded, recognizing the futility of arguing. 7 o'clock. Wear your navy Tom Ford suit, the one with the subtle pinstripe, and the silver cufflinks I got you for our anniversary." The relief in her voice was palpable, immediately followed by rapid-fire instructions. "And please get your hair trimmed tomorrow. Antonio can fit you in at 5. I've already called him." I bristled slightly at being managed like a child, but swallowed my objection. "Anything else I should know about this event?" "It'll be fun, I promise." Her voice brightened artificially. "The firm is renting out the entire rooftop at the Archer Hotel. Open bar, gourmet catering, live jazz. Just be charming and talk about how well your company's doing. The partners love success stories." As I hung up, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted between us. Amanda had always been ambitious, but lately, there was something different about her. She'd been working later than usual, her texts throughout the day had become less frequent, and there was a new emotional distance between us at home. I chalked it up to her pushing for partnership, the pressure making her more focused on work than on us. The nagging voice in the back of my mind suggested otherwise, but I silenced it. After all, we'd built a life together. People go through phases in relationships. This was just a temporary rough patch, I told myself. Little did I know that Friday night would shatter every illusion I had about my marriage, my wife, and the carefully constructed life we'd built together. The Archer Hotel was undeniably impressive, one of Austin's newest luxury properties. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the glittering downtown skyline, and the open-air rooftop garden was adorned with thousands of twinkling lights that transformed the space into something almost magical. A three-piece jazz ensemble played sophisticated background music, while impeccably dressed waiters circulated with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more than what most people made in a day. Amanda had spent the entire afternoon getting ready, disappearing into our master bathroom with an array of beauty products and emerging hours later looking absolutely stunning. Her black Valentino cocktail dress hugged her curves perfectly, her blonde hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders, and the diamond pendant I'd given her for our 5th anniversary nestled elegantly at her throat. Several heads turned as we entered the rooftop venue, and I felt a flicker of pride mingled with possessiveness. Whatever problems we might have been having, my wife was beautiful, successful, and mine. Or so I thought. "Jake, come meet some people," Amanda said, her hand on my arm guiding me through the crowd. Her grip was slightly too tight, almost proprietary, as if I were an accessory she was displaying rather than a partner she was proud to introduce. She led me to a group of men in expensive suits, all holding crystal tumblers of amber liquid and laughing at something that probably wasn't actually funny. "Everyone, this is my husband, Jake Collins," she announced with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Jake, this is William Price, one of the founding partners." A silver-haired man with piercing blue eyes and the confident bearing of someone accustomed to power shook my hand firmly. His grip was dry and strong, despite his 70-plus years. "Ah, the transportation magnate. I've heard quite a lot about your company. Impressive growth these past few years." "Thank you, sir. We've been fortunate," I replied modestly. "Fortunate?" Another man laughed, slightly too loudly. "From what I hear, you've built that company from nothing into a regional powerhouse in less than a decade. That's not fortune, that's skill and determination." I smiled politely, appreciating the recognition of my hard work. Before I could respond, a younger man stepped forward, extending his hand with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. His suit was impeccably tailored to his athletic frame. His watch was clearly expensive, a Patek Philippe that probably cost as much as a decent car, and his smile didn't quite reach his eyes, which remained calculating and cold. "Matt Lawrence, junior partner in corporate law." His grip was too firm, an obvious power move I recognized from countless business meetings with insecure men trying to establish dominance. "Amanda's been instrumental in helping me with the Westfield case. Absolutely brilliant legal mind. We couldn't have structured the deal without her input." I nodded, maintaining eye contact slightly longer than was comfortable. "She's mentioned it. Sounds complex." "Oh, it is," Matt replied, his hand lingering on Amanda's shoulder, a beat too long, as he addressed me but looked at her. "Multiple jurisdictions, regulatory hurdles in 3 states, hostile shareholders. Your wife has an exceptional eye for detail. We've been working late quite a bit, haven't we, Amanda?" She smiled, and I noticed a slight flush spreading across her cheeks that couldn't be attributed solely to the champagne she was drinking. "The case requires attention to detail. And no one pays attention to details quite like Amanda," Matt added, raising his glass slightly in a mini toast that seemed laden with private meaning. Something in his tone made my skin prickle. There was an undercurrent of intimacy, a hint of shared secrets. I glanced at my wife, who seemed to be avoiding direct eye contact with me. That's when I first felt it, the subtle shift in the atmosphere, like the barometric pressure drop before a storm, an almost imperceptible change that animals sense before humans, prompting them to seek shelter before the sky tears open. The evening progressed with more introductions and shop talk. I answered questions about my business, made the appropriate jokes, and played the role of the supportive husband. All the while, I kept noticing small things that individually might mean nothing but collectively formed a pattern I couldn't ignore. How Matt's eyes followed Amanda across the room, how she laughed a bit too enthusiastically at his jokes, how they seemed to communicate without words, the brush of her hand against his arm when she thought no one was looking. 2 hours into the event, William Price tapped a spoon against his glass, calling for attention. The crowd gradually quieted, turning expectantly toward the firm's patriarch. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate another successful year at Lawrence and Price. Our firm continues to thrive because of the dedication, intelligence, and perseverance of everyone in this room. Applause rippled through the crowd as waiters discreetly topped off champagne glasses. I'd especially like to recognize our newest rising stars. He gestured toward Matt and a few others standing near him. The future of our firm looks bright indeed with talent like this leading the way. More applause. Amanda beamed at Matt with unmistakable pride and something else. Admiration? Desire? She was standing closer to him than necessary, their shoulders almost touching. Matt stepped forward, glass raised, his expression suggesting he'd had enough champagne to loosen his inhibitions, but not enough to slur his speech. Thank you, William. I'm honored to be part of this exceptional team. Matt's voice carried across the rooftop, his tone confident and clear. His gaze swept the crowd before settling deliberately on me with a look that could only be described as challenging. And I'd like to propose a toast of my own. The alcohol had clearly emboldened him. I tensed, sensing what was coming but powerless to stop it without creating a scene. To the husbands who pay the bills and keep the home fires burning, while the real partners help their wives climb the ladder of success. The room erupted in laughter. A few people glanced my way, some with sympathy, others barely concealing their amusement at what was clearly a deliberate humiliation. Amanda's smile froze, her expression momentarily panicked as she realized the toast had gone too far, but she didn't contradict him. She didn't step away from him. She didn't defend me or our marriage. She simply took a sip of her champagne and avoided my eyes, her silent complicity speaking volumes about where her loyalties truly lay. In that moment, everything crystallized with brutal clarity. The late nights, the weekend emergencies at the office, the gradually increasing emotional distance, the way she'd guard her phone, the declining intimacy, the deflections and vague answers when I asked about her day. It all made sense now, fitting together like puzzle pieces to form a picture I had subconsciously been avoiding. I didn't create a scene. I didn't storm out. I didn't confront Matt or Amanda publicly. Instead, I smiled politely, raised my glass slightly, and took a measured sip. But inside, something fundamental had shifted. The Jake Collins who had walked into that party no longer existed. In his place stood a man with perfect clarity about what needed to be done. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of meaningless conversations and strategic observations. I made excuses to step away from Amanda, moving to the bar where I could observe her and Matt from a distance. Their body language told me everything I needed to know. The subtle touches that lingered too long, the leaning in to speak when it wasn't necessary, the meaningful glances exchanged across the room. At one point, I noticed them slip out onto a smaller, more private section of the rooftop garden, partially concealed by decorative foliage. I didn't follow. I didn't need to see more to understand what was happening. Instead, I pulled out my phone and made a note of the time. 9:47 p.m. Evidence I thought might be useful later. When Amanda returned 17 minutes later, her lipstick was slightly smudged, and her hair had been hastily readjusted. She didn't notice my gaze cataloging every detail, too flushed with excitement and guilt to register the coldness that had settled into my eyes. "Ready to go?" she asked around midnight, her hand on my arm, her voice slightly hoarse. "I'm exhausted." "Of course," I replied, my voice neutral as I finished my single scotch of the evening. I had deliberately remained clear-headed. It's been quite an evening. The drive home was quiet. Amanda chatted nervously about office politics and who was in line for which promotions, carefully avoiding any mention of Matt's toast or her disappearance with him. I responded with non-committal sounds, my mind already racing ahead, formulating plans, considering options, evaluating leverage. Our house was dark when we pulled into the driveway. It was a beautiful Tudor-style home in one of Austin's most prestigious neighborhoods. A 5-bedroom showcase with a pool, wine cellar, and landscaped gardens. A home I had paid for with the sweat and stress of building my business from the ground up. As we walked inside, I wondered how many times Matt had been here while I was away on business trips. Had they been in our bed? Had they laughed about me afterward? "I'm going to take a shower," Amanda said, heading upstairs, perhaps eager to wash away the evidence of her evening's indiscretions. I nodded, loosening my tie. I've got some emails to check. I'll be up shortly. As soon as I heard the water running, I went to my home office and locked the door. My company, Collins Transportation Solutions, had grown from a single truck to a fleet of over 100 vehicles servicing 3 states. What had started in my apartment with nothing but determination and maxed-out credit cards was now a multi-million-dollar operation with over 200 employees. One of our biggest clients was, ironically, Lawrence & Price LLP. I pulled up our contract with them on my computer. The law firm had outsourced all their courier needs, document deliveries, executive transportation, and secure logistics to my company 3 years ago. A comprehensive service package worth over $2 million annually, representing approximately 38% of their non-legal operational budget. I smiled grimly as I reviewed the termination clause. I had negotiated it personally, insisting on favorable terms that the firm had accepted because my pricing had been competitive and our service record impeccable. Under the terms, they could terminate with 90 days' notice. I, however, could terminate with just 48 hours' notice if there was any conduct detrimental to the business relationship. I would say sleeping with the owner's wife qualified as detrimental conduct by any reasonable standard, but I wasn't ready to play that card yet. First, I needed more information, concrete evidence beyond my observations and suspicions. When Amanda emerged from the shower and went to bed, I pretended to be engrossed in work on my laptop. Once her breathing deepened into sleep, I silently retrieved her tablet from her purse. She had never been particularly security conscious at home, too confident in my trust or too arrogant in her deception. Her password was our wedding anniversary, a date that now felt like a cruel joke, the punchline being the last 6 years of my life. What I found confirmed everything and worse. Messages between her and Matt going back 6 months, starting professionally, then increasingly flirtatious, then explicitly sexual. Photos I wish I had never seen, videos that made me physically ill, plans for meetings disguised as work sessions, hotel receipts, Ubers to his apartment, complaints about me, how I was always working, how I didn't understand her ambitions, how I was safe but boring, how Matt made her feel alive and desired in ways I apparently didn't. There were messages mocking my obliviousness, plans for the future that didn't include me, discussions about how she could maximize her financial position in a divorce once she made partner. Matt advising her to wait before leaving me, to milk the cash cow a little longer while she established herself professionally. My wife agreeing, laughing about it. My hands shook with suppressed rage as I methodically took screenshots of everything, sending them to my private email account and saving them to a secure cloud folder labeled Truth. Then I carefully replaced the tablet exactly where I had found it, erasing all digital traces of my investigation. Sleep was impossible. I lay on the far side of the bed, as far from Amanda as possible, and stared at the ceiling until dawn broke, planning my next moves with the cold precision that had built my business. By the time she stirred, I had already showered, dressed, and was preparing to leave the house. "You're up early for a Saturday," she mumbled, rubbing her eyes, her voice husky with sleep. "Thought I'd go into the office for a bit." "The Henderson account needs some attention before Monday's implementation meeting," I replied, adjusting my watch. She frowned slightly, propping herself up on one elbow. "Will you be home for dinner? I was thinking we could try that new Italian place on 5th Street, the one with the celebrity chef from New York." The casual way she could suggest a date night after what I had discovered, after what she had done just hours earlier, made my blood boil, but I kept my expression neutral, even managing a small smile. "Not sure, I'll let you know. The timeline's pretty tight." As I headed to the door, she called after me, her voice artificially light. "Oh, I might go into the office for a few hours today, too. We're filing the Westfield brief on Monday, and there are some citations that need cleaning up." I turned back, my face a mask of indifference. "With Matt?" A flicker of something, guilt perhaps, or wariness, crossed her face before she controlled it. "The whole team is putting in weekend hours. It's a big case." I nodded, holding her gaze for a beat longer than necessary. "Good luck with that." As soon as I was in my car, I activated the GPS tracking app I had installed on both our phones years ago, originally as a safety measure when we traveled. I watched as Amanda's location icon remained at our house for another hour, then began moving. Not toward downtown and her office as she had claimed, but toward the upscale residential area where I knew Matt Lawrence lived. The little blue dot came to rest at an address I confirmed through a quick property record search as belonging to Matthew J. Lawrence. Everything confirmed. No room for doubt or misinterpretation. No possibility that I was overreacting or jumping to conclusions. No chance for gaslighting or explanations or excuses. Instead of going to my office, I drove to see Alex Ridley, my personal attorney and longtime friend from college days. Alex had helped me structure my business from the beginning and was one of the few people I trusted implicitly. Alex's home office was in a converted garage behind his Spanish-style house in Travis Heights. When I arrived unannounced at 7:30 a.m. on a Saturday, he answered the door in sweatpants and a University of Texas t-shirt, coffee mug in hand and surprise evident on his face. "Jake? What the hell, man? Is everything okay?" He took in my expression and stepped aside without waiting for an answer. "Come in." His home office was cluttered but organized in the way that made sense to him. Stacks of legal journals, multiple computer monitors, legal diplomas, and family photos covering the walls. He cleared some papers from a chair and gestured for me to sit. "What's going on? You look like you haven't slept." "I need your help," I said simply, my voice steady despite the emotional turmoil churning inside me. "And absolute discretion." Something in my face must have conveyed the gravity of the situation. He set his coffee mug down, all traces of morning grogginess vanishing from his expression. "You've got it. Talk to me." Over the next hour, I laid everything out for him. The party, Matt's toast, the messages and photos I discovered, Amanda's current whereabouts according to the GPS tracker, the discussions about milking the cash cow before leaving me once she had secured her professional position. I spoke factually, without emotional editorializing, presenting the situation as I would a business problem requiring a strategic solution. Alex listened without interruption, his expression growing increasingly grim. When I finished, he set his coffee mug down carefully, as if gathering his thoughts. "What do you want to do?" he asked finally. "I want the best divorce attorney in Texas," I replied without hesitation. "Someone who will ensure Amanda doesn't get a penny more than she legally deserves, which isn't much given that the prenup is solid and the business predates our marriage. And I want to review all my company's contracts with Lawrence and Price." Alex nodded slowly, his legal mind already working through the implications. "Margaret Winters is who you want for the divorce. She's ruthless but ethical, specializes in high net worth divorces with complex assets. She gets results without unnecessary drama or publicity, which I assume you'd prefer." "Correct." "As for the contracts," he hesitated, tapping his fingers on his desk. "Jake, I know you're angry, justifiably so, but be careful about mixing business with personal matters. There could be legal implications if you're perceived to be using business contracts as leverage in a personal dispute." "I'm not mixing anything," I said coldly. "I'm protecting my interests on all fronts. The contract has a clear clause about conduct detrimental to the business relationship. This qualifies. I'm simply exercising my contractual rights." He studied me for a moment, then sighed. "I'll call Margaret. She owes me a favor from when I referred the Donaldson case to her, and I'll have my associate Trent pull all the Lawrence and Price contracts for review by this afternoon." "One more thing," I said, leaning forward. "I need a private investigator, someone discreet and thorough." Alex raised an eyebrow. "You already have all the evidence you need for a divorce proceeding? The messages, the photos. What more do you need?" "This isn't just about the divorce. This is about understanding exactly what I'm dealing with at Lawrence and Price. Who knows about the affair? How deep does this go? Are there other conflicts of interest I should be aware of? Has Amanda compromised any of my business? Information. Has Matt used his relationship with her to gain any advantage in negotiations with my company? I need to understand the full picture before I make my next moves." Alex looked troubled but nodded. "I know someone. Frank Doyle, former FBI, 20 years experience. Does corporate work now, specializing in white-collar investigations. Not cheap, but thorough and completely discreet. I'll make the call." Money isn't an issue, I replied. Time is. By noon, the pieces were in motion. Margaret Winters had agreed to meet me on Sunday morning. Frank Doyle was already beginning his background investigation into Matt Lawrence and the internal dynamics at Lawrence and Price. And Alex's associate had delivered a comprehensive folder containing every document related to my business relationship with the law firm. I spent the afternoon and evening reviewing those documents with Alex. The more we looked, the clearer it became that I held significant leverage. My company didn't just handle their standard courier services, we also provided specialized transportation for their high-value clients, secure document destruction for sensitive case files, and specialized shipping for legal exhibits and evidence. Finding a replacement that could handle all these services with our level of security clearance and reliability would be difficult and expensive for them, especially on short notice. You've got them by the throat, Alex concluded, leaning back in his chair and rubbing his eyes after hours of review. But the question remains, what do you want to do with that power? I stared out his window at the gathering dusk, watching as neighborhood children were called in for dinner. Normal families preparing for normal Saturday evenings, their lives untouched by betrayal. I want justice. Justice is subjective, Jake. What does that look like to you? What's your endgame here? I turned to face him. Matt Lawrence publicly humiliated me while sleeping with my wife. He encouraged her to milk me financially while planning to leave. I want him to understand what it feels like to lose everything that matters to him, his job, his reputation, his future prospects. And Amanda? Alex asked carefully. The same. She made her choice. Now she'll live with the consequences. Alex's expression was troubled. Revenge rarely brings the satisfaction people think it will. This isn't just about revenge, I argued, pacing the small office. It's about consequences. People like Matt, people like Amanda, think they can take whatever they want without repercussions. They're so accustomed to operating with impunity that they don't even bother to cover their tracks properly. They need to learn that actions have consequences. And what about your business relationship with the firm? You're willing to sacrifice a $2 million annual contract for this? I smiled thinly. Who said anything about sacrificing it? I'm simply going to renegotiate from a position of strength. We talked late into the night, refining plans, exploring options, weighing risks and rewards. By the time I left Alex's house, I had a clear path forward, a strategy that would maximize my leverage while minimizing my potential exposure. Amanda was asleep when I got home, her makeup perfectly removed, her breathing steady. I wondered if she had showered again to wash away Matt's scent before I returned. The thought made me nauseous. I slept in the guest room, locking the door, not out of fear, but out of disgust. Sunday morning, I told Amanda I had an emergency client meeting. New acquisition opportunity. Can't wait. Instead, I met with Margaret Winters in her downtown office. Despite it being Sunday, she had come in specifically to meet with me after Alex's call. She was a slender woman in her 60s with steel gray hair cut in a precise bob and eyes that missed nothing. Her office was minimalist and modern, with views of Lady Bird Lake and walls adorned with modern art and framed law degrees from Harvard and Yale. Mr. Collins, she said after reviewing everything I had brought, her voice crisp and professional, you have an exceptionally strong case. Texas is a no-fault state for divorce, but infidelity can still impact property division and alimony considerations. The evidence you've gathered is compelling and comprehensive. I don't care about the money, I said, leaning forward. I built my business before I met Amanda. The prenuptial agreement is solid. What I care about is not letting her profit from betrayal. I want this handled quickly and decisively. Margaret nodded, tapping her pen against her legal pad. Understood. We'll file for divorce on grounds of adultery. Given the evidence, I recommend we push for a favorable settlement quickly rather than a protracted court battle. Most people in your wife's position will want to avoid the public humiliation of having these messages and photos entered into the public record. And if she fights it, Margaret's smile was thin and sharp, then we fight harder. But based on my experience, she won't. Not with what you have. No one wants their colleagues, friends, and family to see them plotting to milk the cash cow while carrying on an affair, particularly not an ambitious attorney concerned with her professional reputation. How quickly can we file? I'll have the papers ready for your signature by tomorrow morning. We can file immediately thereafter. However, I understand from Alex that you have a broader strategy in mind involving her employer. You might want to coordinate the timing. I nodded. The filing should happen after I meet with the senior partners at Lawrence and Price. I want to control the sequence of events. Smart, she agreed. Element of surprise is valuable in these situations. Just let me know when to pull the trigger. I left her office with divorce papers prepared and a strategy in place. The final piece would come tomorrow morning. Monday, 7:30 a.m. I arrived at the Lawrence and Price building in downtown Austin, dressed in my best charcoal Armani suit, crisp white shirt, and subtly patterned blue tie, the image of successful business confidence. I carried a leather portfolio containing carefully selected documents and evidence. The security guard recognized me from previous visits and waved me through without question, assuming I was there on regular business related to the firm's transportation services. Instead of heading to the usual courier drop-off point on the third floor, I took the elevator to the top floor, where the senior partners had their offices. The receptionist, an elegantly dressed woman in her 50s, who had been with the firm for decades, looked surprised to see me outside of a scheduled meeting. "Mr. Collins, do you have an appointment this morning?" "Good morning, Diane," I replied with a pleasant smile, having made a point of learning her name during previous visits. "I need to speak with William Price and James Harrison. It's an urgent matter regarding our company's relationship." She hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "They're preparing for the morning partner meeting at 8 a.m. I don't believe they have any availability before then." I fixed her with a steady, serious gaze. "Please tell them it concerns the operational relationship between our companies and requires immediate attention. I'll wait, but I should mention that the matter is time-sensitive and potentially quite serious." Something in my tone must have conveyed the gravity of the situation. She nodded and picked up her phone, speaking quietly into it while occasionally glancing my way. 5 minutes later, I was ushered into William Price's corner office, with its impressive view of the Texas Capitol building. James Harrison, the managing partner responsible for day-to-day operations, was already there. Both men looked concerned, though they maintained professional composures. "Jake," William said, gesturing to a chair across from his massive mahogany desk, "this is unexpected. Is there a problem with our services?" I sat down, placed my portfolio on the desk, and met their gazes directly. "Gentlemen, I'll be direct. My company will be terminating all service agreements with Lawrence and Price, effective immediately." Their expressions shifted from concern to alarm in an instant. "That's impossible," Harrison said, his voice sharp with surprise. "We have contracts which permit termination with 48 hours notice in cases of conduct detrimental to the business relationship," I interrupted calmly, sliding the relevant document across the desk with the clause highlighted in yellow. "I'm giving you the courtesy of an in-person explanation before the formal notice is delivered." "What on earth are you talking about?" William Price demanded, his bushy eyebrows drawing together in confusion. "We've had an excellent relationship for years. Our payments are always on time. We've referred other clients to your services. There have been no complaints on either side. Until Matt Lawrence made it clear at your firm's celebration that he's been sleeping with my wife." The silence that followed was absolute. Harrison's face drained of color. Price's expression hardened as he processed my words. "That's a serious accusation," Price said finally, his voice deliberately measured. "It's not an accusation. It's a fact." I opened my portfolio and laid out selected screenshots of messages between Matt and Amanda, carefully chosen to demonstrate both the affair and its connection to firm business, without being unnecessarily graphic. "My wife works for your firm as an associate. Matt Lawrence is her supervisor on the Westfield case, among others. This constitutes a clear conflict of interest that has compromised our business relationship and violated multiple ethical guidelines for attorneys." Harrison picked up one of the pages, his expression darkening as he read exchanges, where Matt and Amanda discussed using information about my company's finances to structure their billing. "I had no idea." "Few people did, apparently," I replied, keeping my voice even. "They were relatively discreet, until Matt decided to toast to the husbands who pay the bills, while the real partners help their wives climb the ladder of success." Those were his exact words, spoken publicly at your firm's event in front of dozens of witnesses. Price closed his eyes briefly, clearly recalling the moment. I remember the toast. I thought it was just ill-conceived humor after too much champagne. I had no idea it was this. Now you do. I collected the papers and returned them to my portfolio. My company provides 38% of your non-legal operational services. Finding replacements for all these specialized services will be time-consuming, expensive, and potentially disruptive to your operations. However, I'm prepared to offer an alternative solution. Both men leaned forward slightly, their expressions a mixture of concern and cautious interest. Matt Lawrence is terminated from the firm by 10 a.m. today, or my company terminates all services by noon. Additionally, I want a formal investigation into whether my wife's advancement at this firm has been based on merit or her relationship with Lawrence. Harrison's jaw tightened visibly. You're asking us to fire a junior partner without due process or investigation. I'm giving you a business choice, I corrected, keeping my tone professional. You can keep Lawrence and lose my company's services, or you can remove the person whose unprofessional conduct and poor judgment has created this situation. As for investigation, I thought that's what we're doing right now. I've provided evidence of an inappropriate relationship that violates your own ethical guidelines and potentially compromises client service. This feels like blackmail, Price said quietly, though there was more resignation than accusation in his tone. This is consequences, I countered, and a professional courtesy. I could simply terminate our contracts without explanation and file a formal complaint with the State Bar Association about ethical violations at your firm. Instead, I'm giving you the opportunity to handle this internally and minimize disruption to both our businesses. The two partners exchanged glances, having the kind of wordless communication that comes from decades of working together. Harrison sighed heavily. We need to discuss this privately. I stood, checking my watch. I'll wait in the reception area. You have 20 minutes before I need to head to my next appointment. Exactly 18 minutes later, I was called back into the office. Both men looked grim but resolved. Matt Lawrence will be terminated this morning, Price announced without preamble, and will conduct a thorough review of your wife's case assignments and evaluations. I nodded, maintaining my professional demeanor. Thank you for making the right decision. I'll instruct my team to continue services without interruption, and we can discuss contract renewal when the current term expires in 4 months. As I turned to leave, Harrison called after me. Jake, for what it's worth, I'm sorry this happened. We value both our business relationship and our personal connections with our vendors. I paused at the door. So am I, James. By 9:05 a.m., building security was escorting Matt Lawrence out of the Lawrence and Price offices, his personal belongings hastily packed in a cardboard box, his face ashen with shock and dawning comprehension. By 9:30, the managing partner had called an emergency staff meeting to announce that Lawrence had been separated from the firm, effective immediately. No explanation was given, but rumors spread quickly through the whispered conversations and speculative glances that followed. At 11 a.m., Amanda was called to the Human Resources Department and informed that she was being placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation into potential conflicts of interest. Her keycard was deactivated, and she was escorted from the building by the firm's head of security, a humiliating procession witnessed by many of her colleagues. She called me 17 times between 11:15 a.m. and noon. I didn't answer. She left increasingly desperate voicemails, her voice progressing from confused to angry to tearful. I listened to each one, feeling nothing but a cold confirmation that I was doing what needed to be done. At 2:00 p.m., a courier from my own company, handpicked for this task, delivered an envelope to Amanda at the Lawrence and Price reception desk, where she had been waiting in hopes of speaking to someone in authority who could explain what was happening. The envelope contained divorce papers, which the courier handed to her in full view of her colleagues with instructions to ensure personal delivery to Amanda Collins. By 3:20 p.m., the story had spread throughout the KRATD firm like wildfire. Amanda's professional reputation, carefully built over years, was in tatters. Not because of the affair itself, law firms had seen plenty of those, but because of the spectacular, public way it had all come crashing down, suggesting an egregious lack of judgment and discretion. I spent the day in strategic meetings with key clients, ensuring that the dissolution of my marriage would not impact our business relationships. Most expressed sympathy and support. A few seemed to respect me more for how decisively I had handled the situation. Business continued, contracts were signed, operations proceeded. Life went on. At 6:30 p.m., I checked into the Four Seasons Hotel downtown, having arranged for a moving company to collect my essential belongings from the house while Amanda was out searching for answers. I had no desire to see her or speak to her yet. The wounds were too fresh, the anger too raw. But she found me anyway. As I returned to the hotel after dinner with a potential client, she was waiting in the lobby, her normally perfect appearance disheveled, mascara smudged, hair uncombed, designer clothes wrinkled. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her posture uncharacteristically defeated. "You son of a bitch," she hissed, approaching me with fury in every line of her body. "You destroyed everything." I regarded her calmly, keeping my voice low to avoid creating a scene. "No, Amanda, you destroyed everything when you decided our marriage vows meant nothing. When you and Matt laughed about milking me for money while planning your exit strategy." Her eyes widened with shock. "How did you? It doesn't matter how I know. What matters is that I do know. Everything." I moved a step around her. "We have nothing more to discuss. My attorney will handle all communication going forward." "It wasn't like that." Her voice rose, drawing glances from nearby hotel guests. "Matt and it was just physical. It didn't mean anything." "That somehow makes it worse," I replied, feeling a flicker of disgust. "You threw away our marriage for something that didn't mean anything. And we both know it wasn't just physical. I saw the messages about your future together, the plans, the mockery." "You were never there," she accused, grasping at justifications. "Always working, always focused on your precious company. What was I supposed to do? Sit at home and wait while you built your empire? Honor your commitments, or have the decency to end our marriage before starting something with someone else?" I stepped around her. "We have nothing more to discuss. Margaret Winters will handle everything from here." She grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "You got me suspended. You got Matt fired. Do you have any idea what you've done to my career?" I looked pointedly at her hand until she released me. "I didn't do anything to your career. You did that yourself when you decided to sleep with a junior partner who supervised your work. The firm is simply dealing with the ethical breach you both created. Actions have consequences, Amanda. That's a lesson you apparently needed to learn." "You manipulated them. You threatened them with your contracts." "I presented them with facts and business decisions," I corrected. "Now please move aside. Security is watching, and I'd hate for you to be escorted out of a second building today." Her face contorted with rage and desperation. "Jake, please, we can work this out. It was a mistake. A stupid mistake. I'll end it with Matt, I swear. I'll go to counseling. Whatever you want." "It's already ended with Matt," I said coldly. "He's probably updating his resume right now. And there's nothing to work out between us. We're done." 6 years of marriage and you can just walk away? Just like that? "You walked away first. I'm just making it official." Tears streamed down her face, smearing what remained of her makeup. Once, the sight would have broken my heart. Now I felt nothing but a distant pity mixed with lingering betrayal. "What am I supposed to do now?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "That's not my concern anymore." I stepped into the waiting elevator. "Goodbye, Amanda." As the doors closed on her stricken face, I felt no triumph, no satisfaction, just a hollow certainty that I had done what needed to be done. The woman I had loved, had built a life with, had trusted completely, was now a stranger to me. The future I had imagined, children, growing old together, building something lasting, had been revealed as nothing but an illusion. The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal meetings, business adjustments, and practical matters like finding a new place to live. I bought a modern penthouse downtown, completely different from the traditional Tudor we had shared, and filled it with new furniture, new artwork, new everything. No reminders. Amanda fought the divorce briefly, then capitulated when Margaret made it clear just how damaging a public court battle would be. The settlement was straightforward. I kept my business and the assets I had brought into the marriage. She kept her personal property and a modest settlement that Margaret assured me was less than a judge would likely have awarded. but which I approved to avoid prolonging the process. Matt Lawrence struggled to find new employment. The legal community in Austin was tight-knit, and though the official reason for his departure from Lawrence and Price was confidential, the whispers followed him. Multiple firms declined to interview him after discreet calls from William Price or James Harrison. He eventually took a position with a small, struggling firm in Houston at a fraction of his previous salary. Amanda lost her job after the internal investigation concluded that Matt had indeed shown favoritism in case assignments and performance reviews. She tried to argue gender discrimination, but the evidence of the affair and its impact on firm business was too damning. She moved to Dallas to start over with a smaller firm. Her partnership dreams deferred indefinitely, if not permanently. I threw myself into my business, expanding into new markets and adding services. The work was a welcome distraction from the wreckage of my personal life. Friends tried to set me up on dates, but I wasn't ready. Trust, once broken, is not easily rebuilt. The foundation has to be excavated completely and poured anew. My contract with Lawrence and Price was renegotiated on more favorable terms when it came up for renewal. They needed me more than I needed them now, and both sides knew it. I was professional and fair, but used my leverage appropriately. Business is business, after all. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I attended a business conference in Houston. The keynote reception was held at a downtown hotel, reminiscent of the fateful night that had set everything in motion. I arrived alone, but soon found myself engaged in conversation with industry colleagues, discussing expansion opportunities and market trends. As I reached for a drink at the bar, I turned and found myself face-to-face with Amanda. She looked thinner, her designer dress not quite as expensive as those she used to wear, her smile tight and forced when she saw me. The confident glow she had once carried had dimmed noticeably. "Jake, Amanda, I didn't know you'd be here." "My firm represents Grayson Technologies." She gestured vaguely toward a group of executives across the room. "Small world." An awkward silence stretched between us, filled with unspoken recriminations and regrets. "How have you been?" she finally asked, her voice artificially casual. "Good, busy. The company's expanding into New Mexico next month. New distribution center in Albuquerque." She nodded. "I heard. Congratulations." Another pause. "And you? Personally?" I considered lying, telling her I was seeing someone, but decided against it. "Focused on work." "You?" "The same." She took a sip of her wine, her hand trembling slightly. "I saw Matt last month. He's struggling." "That's unfortunate," I said neutrally. "He blames me for everything." A bitter laugh escaped her. "Says I ruined his life." "You both made choices." Her eyes met mine, searching. "Do you ever think about us? What we had?" "I think about what I thought we had," I replied honestly. "I'm not sure it was ever real." She flinched as if I'd slapped her. "It was real, Jake. I loved you. I just lost my way." "Well, you found your way to Matt, and he found his way out of a job, and now we've all moved on." I set my empty glass on the bar. "If you'll excuse me, I need to speak with some clients." "Jake, wait." She touched my arm, her expression suddenly vulnerable. "I'm sorry for everything. I know it doesn't change anything, but I am truly sorry. What I did was unforgivable." I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since that night at the party. The woman I had loved, had built a life with, had trusted, completely, now a stranger with familiar features. "Thank you for the apology," I said finally. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Amanda." As I walked away, I felt lighter somehow. The anger that had fueled me for months had burned itself out, leaving behind not forgiveness. I wasn't there yet and might never be, but something like closure. The weight I had been carrying eased fractionally, allowing me to breathe more freely than I had in months. Later that evening, I found myself on the hotel's rooftop bar, nursing a whiskey and enjoying the Houston skyline. The night was clear, the air warm with the promise of spring. A woman approached, asking if the seat next to me was taken. "It's all yours," I replied. She sat down, ordered a drink, and introduced herself as Elena, an architect in town for the same conference. She was striking, dark hair, intelligent eyes, confident posture, without the brittle edge of ambition that I now recognize as a warning sign. Our conversation flowed easily, touching on business, design, Austin, where she was considering opening a second office, and a dozen other topics. No forced laughter, no hidden agendas, just genuine interest and engagement. She wasn't wearing a wedding ring, I noticed. Neither was I anymore. When she asked if I'd like to have dinner the following evening, I hesitated only briefly before accepting. Not a date, necessarily, just dinner, conversation, the possibility of connection without expectation. If you like this story, please click the hype button. This video deserves to be popular.